Well, Christine, you are definitely the definition of a serial entrepreneur. Like everybody uses that phrase, but I'm like, you actually embody that phrase like straight up. So excited to share your story.
So let's go to the very, very beginning real quick, and I'll do like rapid fire the companies I've built and sold. I started as a girl with a lemonade stand, actually with snow cones, because like everybody had a lemonade stand. I wanted to innovate. So we were doing snow cones as kids, me and my sister. And so that, I mean, my father's a business owner and he always was. So I think it was just kind of ingrained in me to be your own boss. And so straight out of high school, I got my real estate license and got into property management. So I didn't get into entrepreneurship quite yet. Did that for 5 years. Loved property management, loved real estate. But then didn't like working for other people. So launched my first company in 2003, Cleanology here in San Diego. I was 23 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. Started with $300 in a vacuum cleaner and 2 women that only spoke Spanish and I only spoke English. So I learned Spanish quickly. And that was about 5 or 6 years. And it was just time to do something different. I had 35 employees at that time, roughly, a manager. Like, you'll kind of hear the trend. I only exit when everything's super stable, amazing reputation, amazing team, managers in place. Like all I'm doing is the marketing and I don't feel needed anymore. Like I love the chaos of a startup, believe it or not, which is like, there's not many of us that love that. But that's like the creative part, the chaos and the growth and implementing systems. And so Cleanology exited that in 2010, started Social Starfish, which is a social media company. Also owned Adopt a Christmas Tree, during Cleanology. So I was actually a parallel entrepreneur, which is when you're running 2 companies at the same time. Luckily that was seasonal. I loved that business, had it for 10 years, but it just became a lot down the road with these other companies. Social Starfish was with my boyfriend. He still owns it to this day. He's a great guy. So he bought me out when we broke up. so there's another theme. I've started a couple companies with boyfriends. So that's the joke. Like when we break up, that's the concession prize is they get the company. And then I start something new. And so 2012 started Eco Chateau. That's the one we'll go into the most depth about because that was the most recent. Started 2012, exited 2017. Again, that like 5-year itch where that's about as long as it takes to get everything situated. And then I'm not needed anymore. And it's kind of disappointing at first. I remember I left for Europe for a month during that business towards the end. And yeah, they had their biggest sales month on record. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not needed anymore.
They don't need me.
Yeah. And the person I was with in Europe, he's like, that's everybody's dream is like you build a company and you're not needed anymore. And I'm like, oh, I know, but I'm bored. So yeah, I listed it for sale that like 6 months later. So with Eco Chateau, is a wellness spa. I felt like there wasn't like most spas were Asian themed. I wanted a French theme, had an amazing, Marie and Nicole, like this incredible branding team that because I'm not that creative when it comes to the name and the branding and the look and feel. I mean, they killed it on the concept and lots of credit to them. And how I kind of got worked out of the position. I was bored. I'm like, it's time to move on. It's not fair to the company if you guys, you're not burned out, or you're just over it, you're not as passionate about the company anymore. It's not fair to your team. It's not fair to the clients and the customers. And so that's where I'm like, okay, somebody else can come in. We listed on Biz by Sell, which everybody watching and listening, it's massive. I sold a couple companies on there. So no broker, 2 brokers. I saw an old broker for Cleanology and then I saw a new one, and they both knocked it down 40%. Like, hey, this is my price, 40% their commission. That's not a big difference to my like 6-figure X. That's a massive commitment. So they want to drop it and sell it quick. Like, again, words of wisdom. Yeah. And they were just kind of bratty about it. And they're like, Christine, never get that amount. And that like stuck in my head. I got full asking price. And yes, I did email them. Like, hey guys, purchase agreement, like sold in 5 weeks. So my stats were, yeah, we listed was 696 people looked at the ad on Biz by Sell.
Mm,
83
mm.
people emailed about it. Only had two in-person meetings. They were both with a husband and wife. And yeah, and then sold to an amazing wife team. They really believed in what we were doing. They didn't change anything. The team, like that was important. Please keep the team. Please don't everything. Still have it to this day. And so another tip for people listening, I spent an entire day in that ad. It needs to be so descriptive and so detailed to get them about your company. And I took it a step further and I decided people do a pitch deck for raising money. Why can't you do a pitch deck, a really pitch deck, when you're on you selling the company? So it is like super detailed screenshots of Yelp, screenshots of the whole team. We had 37 employees. And so, yeah, they came in on a Sunday. I'll never forget it. And I'm like, hey, show you this presentation first to kind of give you like a really great vision of what the company's about. And yeah, that was how I sold the company. So I think that's my biggest advice.
Awesome. So much to unpack there, Christine.
I know,
That's
sorry.
amazing. No. It's awesome. It's really, really awesome. So let's continue on just kind of the timeline, if you will, and then we can go back and keep putting in, advice, lessons learned, things of that nature. So you sold Eco Chateau. You had 2 locations. It was a great concept. I loved it. Extremely well done. And I will say, I feel like that's part of the thread of at least what I'm seeing as an outsider is just really good branding. I mean, you invested in that early on in each of the businesses.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, reputation is number one. I mean, customer service was above and beyond. If anything went wrong, I would comp them. I comped them a lot of stuff just to keep them happy, to get those great. I mean, we had 5 stars, like pretty much the whole time, the whole term of the company. And then the second location, I'm like, oh, that's going to be hard to replicate. And 5 stars, so anywhere between 4.5 to 5. I replied to every single Yelp. If you go there, you'll see every single Yelp review has been replied to, good or bad. I think that's another tip to show that you care. My girls were doing, and this is like I was thinking before we jumped on this interview, because sometimes you forget this stuff. I was having the girls do handwritten thank you notes to first-time clients across the board. And it was a lot. We paid, we got the cards for them. We put the stamp on it, all they had to do is dress it, write something personal. I mean, who has ever gotten, like to this day, I've never gotten like a handwritten card after having a service. Anywhere. And then the follow-up, I'm blown away. I've had a million facials. I've had a million massages all over the place. I've never once gotten even a follow-up call. Like, hey, Christine, we miss you. I'm like, do they not like me? Like, so you don't feel cared for. I'm like, well, why wouldn't they say, hey, it's been a month, come back for a facial? Like horrible follow-up in the world. And we were crazy at follow-up. We would call, leave messages. Hey, I miss you. Love to see you again. How's your skin doing? We would text. So that was a big thing. And I think a lot of businesses miss the boat on that. Like you have their cell phone number these days. And if you just shoot them a quick text, we got way more. We got probably 80% response rate versus a voicemail or email.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. So you sell Eco Chateau. You had sold Adopt a Christmas Tree. I don't want to brush over that too much because, that was a really cool business. Will you describe that business briefly and then talk about how that exit came about?
Yeah, so again, Eco Chateau was my favorite. Adopt a Christmas Tree was my second favorite. That one, so an environmentalist here in Pacific Beach, it was these potted living trees, like Christmas trees, regular size, 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet. You just water it during the holidays, and then we would pick them up. So we had singing, dancing elves deliver it, do a cute song and dance, set it because they are heavy, and then they'd water it. They'd pick them all up and no extra charge, and we would replant the fire devastated areas of San Diego. And it's crazy because we had those fires. What was it, 2003, 2004? I can't remember and then like 2007, and like he only had the business 1 year. the craziest story. I was like, Michael, like, why aren't you doing this anymore? Like, it's such a great idea. He's like, look, I've got a bigger environmental project I'm working on. It's taking like 300 cars off the road. It's switching out incandescent lighting at warehouses. And so he's like that, like he was a true environmentalist through and through. And he's like, well, you could buy it off of me. And I was like, okay. He's like, what are you thinking? In negotiation, everybody listening, you don't want to name the first price ever, ever, ever. Yeah, Fleet is like, yep. And so I'm like, well, are we talking, because I'm trying to get around it, right? Are we talking hundreds or thousands? And he's like, well, let's go with hundreds. I'm like, $500? And he's like, sold. I'm like, what? Like, this was like a super profitable business. It had insane press. It was like a press darling. Again, I think he just wanted the right person to take it over. It wasn't about the money. So I was stoked. And then, let's see here. So ran it for 10 years. Fun time. I mean, I never had the holidays. So like from Thanksgiving to Christmas, it was like non-existent holidays for me. It was like insane running 2 companies, but I loved it. It was fun. We were doing cool things. 32 million trees get cut in the US and wasted during Christmas time. So this is a really cool thing. And those fires happened the year I bought it. So we got hit with like national news. It was insanity. Like we were on every news channel, front page of the Union Tribune. Like I wasn't expecting that, but we ran with it. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a fun, I mean, and like the people I sold it to, so it was great to sell it to a friend. And it was profitable from day one. So yeah, that was a fun, but it's crazy 6 weeks for sure.
Okay. So then you get excited. So you sell Eco Chateau and you get excited about co-living. And now you are developing software. You have developed software in that industry. You're in the tech side of it. But what got you excited about co-living initially?
So I was co-living the last 2 years of Eco Chateau. I always had, nurses as roommates. So I'd always have 2 roommates in Mission Valley. I lived in the same townhome for like 10 years. And, nurses or military, and they were great, don't get me wrong, but they'd bitch about their jobs all the time. And they would live for Friday, live for the weekend and dread Monday. And like, that's not my life. I'm the opposite, right? Like the weekend comes and I'm like, oh, like, I mean, or I'll work a little bit because it's such like a passion for me. And like, that just got like over time. I'm like, I told my mentor, Henry Evans, who's still my mentor over a decade. I was like, Henry, like, I just wish I could live in a big house with only entrepreneurs and like have everything taken care of for us so we could just work and concentrate on our companies. And he's like, hey, I know somebody that just moved out of what you're talking about. It's in Mission Hills. He just moved out. You should go talk to these guys. I didn't know any of these guys. I saw it on a Thursday and I moved in on Tuesday. It was crazy. And there's 6 of us in this home. The funny stories that I went to, and I'm sure we'll talk about, I went to Europe and lived there last summer, lived in LA, also West LA, and then landed my plane from Europe because I had to rush back. And had nowhere to live. So it was either West LA or San Diego again. And I literally had a text on my phone. And it was a guy saying, hey, Chrissy, do you know anybody female? Because they really love having one female in the house at least. Like it's a different energy it brings. And female this age, I'm like, oh my God, like I literally just landed. I was going to stay in a hotel for a week. I'm moving in. So I'm back here. It's been a year already. I told them I wouldn't sign a 6-month lease, but I'm like, because I didn't know what was going on if I would go back to Europe. And they're like, fine. I'm like, honestly, guys, I'm probably going to stay more than 6 months. Like the last one was a year and a half. So now it's a year again. Amazing atmosphere. So sorry, backing up. I started Kndrd Quarters like after living in this home the first time, because again, I'm like, oh my gosh, we can make more of these houses. This one had a waiting list, and that's what we did. We got one right up the hill, and I still had Eco Chateau because the selling, I said I sold it, but then you have escrow, who's like 3.5 months is how long it took because they got an SBA loan, and I'll talk more about that in a second. So did my cleaning company. That guy got an SBA loan. It gets like, no matter what they say, it's going to be 3 months minimum, roughly 3 months with the SBA loans, which is fine, but that's why so I'd already started Kndrd Quarters. I was like, oh man, this is a little crazy. Yeah. And then we opened a house in Los Angeles. That's what took me. So 6 months later, the guys were like, hey, let's jump to Los Angeles. So we jumped to LA, West LA, and loved it. and I went only for a month, but I stayed 10 months because we were in Playa Vista. It's amazing. I know nobody likes LA and San Diego. I've been in San Diego for 17 years, so it was nice to have a little fresh change.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you have partners in that business, Christine?
In Kndrd quarters, no.
Okay.
No.
So when you say guys, you just mean the guys you were working,
In the
kind of
house.
working with.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. And then what took you to Europe?
So Kndrd quarters, second location, I was like, oh my God, I need software. Like I can't scale without software. We use MindBody online at the spa. It was incredible software. I'm like, I need to make the MindBody software for like co-living. There was nothing. And so I asked some of my tech friends, 6 months, begging them, please make this, please make this. Nobody would do it. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do this. And I don't have a tech background, everybody listening. So I got 2 technical co-founders. I knew one of them for years. And we launched in August, and I was still running the homes. So it was 2 companies again, and they were both startups. Technically, that's a bad rule. Don't do 2 startups. Like get one stable and then you could start another company. And then we started in August 8th. So almost our 2-year anniversary. And then within 3 or 4 months, we got into Techstars, which is like one of the top accelerator programs in the world. We were, 10 out of 300 applications. It was in Amsterdam. Like it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, we got in that fast. Moved to Europe March 1st that following year. And it was in Amsterdam for 3 months. That's the program. And then I stayed 2 extra months because I loved it there. I was in the process of getting my Dutch visa. I'm still in the middle of that process. I love it over there. So that's what took me to Europe and then back to California.
And now you're back. That's great.
Yay. And I have all angels on my cap table, just so you guys know. We talked to the VCs, and that is like, I never knew. And it's sad to experience because I've never experienced it. Maybe because I had female kinds of businesses, spa and cleaning and whatever. It is very hard being a CEO in tech. It blows my mind. The kinds of questions I get asked. We talked with a bunch of VCs the end of last year, and I'm like, this is a freaking joke. Like, I can't even deal with this. And so we went to angels. So we have angels the whole time. We have, 4 incredible angels on our cap table that are, all of them, I think, are local. So, yeah.
Awesome. Women, men, who invested in the company?
One is a female. And then I have 1 female on the board of advisors. She's amazing. She's a business owner here in San Diego, super successful company. Yeah, I'm like, Stacey, I need you on it. Like, let's get some women in the game. Come on. Yeah.
Seriously. Okay, well, let's go to advice. I know you've already given us some great advice. Let's keep rolling with that.
No, in general, a service business is usually a multiple. It's a 2 to 3 multiple of your net. Okay. Most of us know that. Okay. Every business is different, but I mean, this industry, service-based industry, 2 to 3. I listed it at 4.5 multiple, and everybody said again, like, no way. Even my mentor is like, that's too high. Like, what are you doing? I was like, it doesn't hurt to ask. I'm not in a big hurry. Let's try it. And again, brokers would say no. Just general public would say, don't do that. Okay, it's fine. And I like to negotiate. So I was like, oh, there's room for negotiation. And then full price offer came in. And I remember seeing on my phone, I was eating sushi and I was like blown away. I'm like, oh my God. And so I would say don't listen to because there's other things to consider. Your team, how long they've been there, how amazing they are, your reputation. There's things that are not getting factored in that multiple. You cannot use that. That's just a general rule of thumb, but don't pay attention to that.
And when you say that, what exactly, what's included? Total bottom line before interest and taxes.
No, I tell everybody this too, because they freak out. Like, I don't want to pull money. And I was super careful. I don't want to run everything through my business because, especially towards the end when you're about to sell, because then that's like shrinking my net income. That's not true at all. It's called add backs. So you literally will show, here's my personal cell phone bill running through the company. Here's my car running through the company. And it's added back to the bottom line. So I teach everybody that because people don't know. Cash, on the other hand, and I'm not going to lie, probably was pulling out like 200 a week because we had a lot of cash coming through. That cannot be counted. And I told the buyers, hey guys, I pull like 200 a week or per day. 200 a week. I know it's not going to be included. It's fine. I knew that all along. So That's a great question.
Okay. Yeah, that is a good point, because, you know, especially depending on your structure, like I have a C corp, which isn't a pass through, and the goal is to run that to zero, right? So you're not, you know, you don't have double taxation issues. So good
Yeah.
to
So
know.
that, yeah, you're going to pay, you got to get really have an amazing CPA, but you're exactly right. Your tax, you're going to probably pay more taxes, especially towards the, you know, I did start boosting it up, like being more careful towards the end. But yeah, I wanted a healthy net towards the end there. Yeah, don't build with the exit in mind. I know people think that because I jump so fast. Again, that's just my 5 years, just my like draw my point. Don't ever build with the X in mind. You know, we on the software company, we had a big offer. We had an LOI within 10 months of building this software company, which is insane. When I was in Europe, it was out of Berlin. So I had to move to Berlin for 3 weeks. These guys were horrible human beings. So I'm like, I'm not selling my company for any price. But it was an insane price. So, you know, it was a 7-figure price, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, like, why wouldn't you? But it was like, no, these guys were not good. I couldn't work because I would have to work with them for 2 years. So don't build, I mean, in the back of your head, have it there, but don't ever say, oh, I'm building this company so I can exit for this number. Dude, it will never, ever work. Help your buyer get funding, get create, you know, the better, the easier you make it on them, the better. You know, especially if they're struggling. We got a call at the like 11th hour that the SBA, this is where the purchase price got messed up. The SBA is like, they did evaluation. They're like, no, we're not giving this much. And so it was like a 20%. It was a big difference. And I was like, look, Steve, like I could get another buyer full price. This was like at the 11th hour. And I was like, right to my face, and we're there. He took the call when we were in person. And I'm like, look, like if you know, I know you sold a home or you have to pull a second on your home, like, let's get creative. If you want me to introduce you to other banks or other angels, let me know. So you just get super creative with, if they need help with the funding. I always take all cash deals. So there's no, I've heard too many horror stories of taking payments. If I did take payments, it would have been like over the 3 multiple, then I would have divvied that up. So that's another little tip. Lawyer, okay, so last point, you don't have to use a lawyer. So people wanted to kill me on this thing. They're like, Christine, we can't believe you're not using a lawyer for this big transaction and you're doing the whole thing by yourself. And so I was like, look, like I'm using the same exact agreement from Cleanology that was pushed through a lawyer. I'm using the exact same one. I'm just changing a couple things. They have a really amazing lawyer that the buyer spent a lot of money on. Like that, I would always tell them, like, hey, ask your lawyer. Hey, go through your lawyer. Hey, make sure your lawyer reviews this contract in detail. And it worked out A-okay. So again, that's not, I think very few people would have done that. I would have probably spent like 10 grand in lawyer fees. So that's it.
I love it. I love it. No, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago, and that's all cash, which isn't always easy to negotiate. A lot of times the buyer wants you, right? They want you to hang on and come over with the company. A lot of the stories that I've told through this channel have been, yeah, they made me stay on for a year or 2 years. Oftentimes doesn't go well. So you knew that going into it, obviously. And a lot of times, you know, in some cases, folks I've talked to, it's an all stock deal, you know, then you're totally tied to that company. What are the talking points that you used, Christine, so you didn't have to get into earnouts or staying on as a, you know, consultant for months and months? I mean, what did you say, frankly?
You really need to sell the fact that the company runs itself. You know, I was definitely the face of the company. That gets a little tricky too. And I'm the same problem in my current tech company right now. But don't be afraid to do that because you could still work yourself out. But I mean, it was super self-sufficient, 3 managers in place, 35 employees. I did not need to be there. That was another thing. They're like, well, Christine, why are you here full-time still? And I was like, what else am I going to do? Like, I like being here. I like doing marketing. It's always the last hat. It doesn't even come off. I love marketing to the end. And so you're just very upfront, like this business runs itself. You don't need me. And or you could pay, or you could charge an extra consulting fee if I'm going to stay on. So big mistake with Cleanology. So, you know, I learned these lessons. So hopefully people listening don't have to go through it. The broker told me put a, what was it, a 90-day training period. Again, I'm like, it's a cleaning company. Like there's a manager. Like, I don't even know the half the stuff he's doing. How am I going to train you? Just he's staying. And that guy held me to 90. And my broker said, oh, Christine, they're never going to hold you to it. The owner, they usually kick out within 2 weeks. And I thought that. So again, I'd started another company already, of course. And he's like, I need you full-time 90, the full 90, because that's what the contract says. Oh, it was so hard. I think we settled, we like split in half, or like half days. I don't even remember. And I was like, oh man, that's horrible. So the new contract for the spa, I said 2 weeks training. I was like, this is self-sufficient. If you need me anytime, like for probably a year, Steve can call me anytime. He knows that. Same day response. I'm totally cool. I go in the spa every month still, which is amazing. Most of the staff is there. But yes, everybody listening, please do not say that, because you never know. And don't do an earn out. Like everybody I know that did the 2 year stay, it was such a nightmare. It's so hard. You're watching them change your company and make bad decisions sometimes. Yeah.